here from Truelove Quilts for You, Jean Truelove. I do have a tutorial for us today from one of our little suggestions. I had a quilter's block and I got a million suggestions from people. So this is my little tutorial. I have a story, but I'll tell the people who don't want to hear me when to go to the tutorial, to see the tutorial on what I have made. Now you might be wondering, why do I have some leaves in my hand? Well, this is my little tutorial today. I have made a little larger than a mug rug, a little smaller than a placemat, but this is my mug place. my mat mug. So it's a little fall themed placemat, little quilted thing. But it's appliqued. I show you how I do the applique, and I did not use any expensive templates. I went out in my yard and I got a leaf. Oops, one fell. And or another leaf. And I show you how. You don't need expensive templates. You can use circles, you can use squares, or you can go out in your garden and make a leaf. As you know, I don't celebrate the traditional holidays. We love the autumn here. We're in the fall in Pennsylvania. Just beautiful. And when the leaves go from the green to the golds and the oranges, just glorious. But I do have a little story which sort of inspired my thought process to make this little mug rug. Sweet little thing. I take you through all the steps how I made this little mug rug. Super simple, with lots of scraps that I used. Or you could use fat quarters or whatever fabric. But I do have a little story, and I wanted to share this with you. When I first started quilting about 15 years ago, I wanted to do a applique, and I really didn't know what I was doing, but I wanted to make a leaf quilt, okay, around the autumn time. And I believe I found it at Joann Fabrics, this fabric. This has a leaf pattern in it, and I was all excited to make I got a couple yards for the sashing, and then I had collected or fat quarters, or where did I get them? I forget where I had gotten them. Somebody had given me quite a few, like fall browns, golds, greens, reds, and I had a template for this. I don't know, there was a pattern in a book a million years ago, and I cut out faithfully. I cut out the fabric, and I did not know about the product, like either a seam, a fusible web. I didn't know about that then, and I actually when I made this one 20 years later, 15 years later, today, I did it exactly as I did my leaf quilt. I show you, though, the product that you can do, and it's very simple. But I cut this out, and I think I pinned all my leaves on it. But I want to tell you about this quilt, a huge quilt, an undertaking. And I did a satin stitch. It's done beautifully, but it's not really. And then I practiced my free motion quilting 15 years ago when I first started to quilt around, echo quilt around each leaf. My leaf quilt, though, it's so funny. I made this, and when you first start to quilt, your beginning projects, whether they're good, whether they're not good, whether they've turned out pretty crummy, they're precious to you, right? Your first quilt. Well, this was among maybe the first dozen quilts that I had made. And if you've been following, you know, the first quilts I made were all big. I never started out with like a coaster. I started out really big, really ambitious. But this was one of my quilts. And as I said, about 15, 16 years ago, I'm going to put up some pictures that through the years, this quilt has been used. We had taken this quilt, I made it, and it was in my living room, and it was sacred. Well, all of a sudden, it went missing. And we had 10 children. Things went missing, they came back. But I said that after a few weeks, I'm like, where's my leaf quilt? And here our oldest son, I believe that was Luke at the time. No, our oldest son is Luke, but I believe it was him at the time. He said, "Oh, Mom, I needed it in my truck." And I'm like, well, okay, we'll bring it back. It came back, and it was, you know, I washed it. It's been washed a million times. Then it disappeared again. And I believe our son Jean-Pierre said, "Oh yeah, I took that down the beach when he was courting his girlfriend like 10 years ago." I said, "Well, could you bring it back?" Sure, he brought it back full of sand. I washed it. It disappeared again. You get the idea. Every one of our children, if I if the pandemic wasn't around and I could go video them, which I probably could, but I'm not going to. Trust me, every one of our children, for some reason, have claimed this quilt. And it has gone missing. I have found this quilt in the back of trucks. Covering up tools. This quilt has been on so many camping trips, pictures in tents, in trucks, on the beach, rock climbing, picnics. People wrapped around it, and of course the pictures that I have are our family over the years. We have a million quilts in our house, and so many people grab my leaf quilt. And I was going to be doing this video probably about a year ago, and I said to the boys, I said to Jean-Pierre, Francois, Malia, Niles, not Elliot, but I said to all of them, I'm going to be doing a video on my leaf quilt. They're like, no, Mom, that's my leaf quilt. Well, I got it back. I got it back. After 15 years, this quilt has disappeared for a year on end. I get it back, and the grandchildren have it's been peed on and pooped on and vomited on, and I wash it. Look at this; it's washed up beautifully. And this, I said it's a very large quilt, and everybody has claimed it, but I got it back. I got it back for now. And when I was thinking of my fall themed little mug rug that I wanted to make, I couldn't but help think of my leaf quilt. And it goes to show that when you make a quilt and you're so thrilled, it's almost sacred, right? not I'm using that word, but it's so special. But by all means, quilts are meant to be used and loved and sometimes ripped and you repaired and the stitches go. So that's this quilt, and this is the famous. The boys are like, oh yeah, that's my leaf quilt. I'm like, no, that's my leaf quilt. They're like, no, you gave it to me. I'm like, we never had that conversation. Everyone. So I said, who when we die, who's going to get the leaf quilt in our will? They're going to have to fight about it, right? So it's going to be like King Solomon, who gets the leaf quilt without ripping it into shreds. So anyway, that was the inspiration for my little mug rug, which again, I did not buy any expensive templates for. I went out in my yard. But again, I was saying if you wanted to do any kind of theme or for your holidays, to make a star, or to make you who celebrate Christmas, to make a little stocking or a little ornament. There are lots of images of all sorts of things, not holiday themed, but all sorts of things in coloring books, the simplest of children's coloring books. You don't have to buy expensive templates. Think outside the box. I went outside and I got a leaf. And I made this little mug rug. But again, any season, this is my little fall thing that I'm going to make. You could make, I mean, these are lovely, but you could, this is, as I said, a little bit larger than a mug rug, a little bit smaller than a placemat. I give you the approximate dimensions for this project, but you can make it smaller or larger, whatever. And don't overthink it. Oh, don't overthink it. If it's made with love and it's made in the spirit of my leaf quilt, then whoever gets it will love it. So I do hope you enjoy the tutorial, folks. And again, thank you for all your ideas. I'm putting my thinking cap on and I'm coming up with stuff. So I hope you love it. All right, see ya. Bye. Here I've literally pulled some scraps that I have, some little scraps. I try to keep all my fabrics in different colors, so I can just pull scraps. This is my largest scrap that I'm pulling. This is going to be, hopefully you all have seen it, this is going to be the actual leaf applique that I've chosen. I'm going to choose to put on a little bit of a brighter background here. Now, as you can see, they're both printed fabrics. This one actually has leaves on it. That's why I pulled that. I think that's pretty. And then this will read as a solid from a distance, but it's more interesting. And then I've just pulled, I don't know how many I'm gonna need. I might have to pull some more. Some darker brown and gold and rust color and orange scraps that I'm going to be making, hopefully, a checkerboard, I think, because I love checkerboards, as you know. But for now, what we have to do, we'll put that aside for now, our fabric choices. What we're going to have to do is, hopefully I will have shown you in the beginning, I just went outside in our property and I've just pulled 4 leaves. I'm thinking, why spend some fancy money on some fancy templates when you have nature to pull from? Now, obviously, the quilt that I had made, I had used a template, 15 years ago or so, and it was a leaf that looked like this. I don't know if trees, I don't know, is that a maple leaf? I have no idea. But this is like a leaf that really looks fabulous, okay? Now, it has a ton of little points. I'm going to be using this one, but I'm not going to be trying to replicate these little points. But, forget that aside for a second, just audition on your quilt if you're going to be making a whole quilt. Or if you're going to be making different mug rugs for little presents, by all means, you could do different leaves. So you could have one for this one if you did perhaps a set of 2 or 4 for somebody. You could do different leaves. That's a pretty leaf. And again, it's in nature. It has all of these lovely, beautiful, jagged edges. We're simplifying this, obviously, with I will probably be doing a zigzag stitch. A looser zigzag stitch on my leaf mug rug here. Now, if you wanted to do something miniature, here is a leaf that's obviously smaller, okay? And again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to trace around. Here's another leaf like that, okay? So the option in nature is endless. But say this one, I like this size. Forget the stem. I will cut the stem off. And what I'm going to do is, I have a piece of card here. This is my comic book board card, but you could use anything. And I was thinking about this. A lot of people will have like a freezer paper. However you want to make your patterns is up to you. But I'm just doing a loose interpretation of this leaf. I'm not overthinking it at all because that loses the fun of it. I'm just seriously just coming along here, and we'll see what this ends up looking like. And there's my leaf. I think that's pretty good. Yeah, I think that's awesome. Super. Decent size. Now, my mug rug, when I cut this out, I'm going to cut it a little bit smaller because it's just slightly, I've made it a little bit bigger going around my thing, but I will cut out my pattern just slightly smaller than this leaf here. And then when I stitch it onto my background, I'm going to figure out how big I want my mug rug. Perhaps just about that size, maybe just slightly bigger, sort of more of a rug mug slash placemat, but like a cup of tea and a little biscuits or something here. I might make my background, or where my applique goes, and then my checkerboard over here, slightly bigger, but I'll figure that out as I go. So we have a rough outline of my leaf, but then I can always do, when we go to stitch it out, I could always just do a stitching to put in some veins. And that's what I've done on my other quilt that I was showing you that I had made a million years ago. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to roughly, because everything in nature is rough, it doesn't have to be perfect, I'm going to cut this out of my cardboard here. And again, if you have a template plastic, you can use, so yeah, I'll be back after I cut this out. So I have cut out from my card, I've cut out my leaf template. There you go. There is my leaf template. I've used this leaf. And what I've done, this is from card, and what I've done is on the reverse side of the leaf, the pattern the fabric that I want to use for my actual leaf, I don't know if you can see that, but I've taken a pen and I have just, on the reverse side where I can see it a little bit better and it won't show on the outside, I've traced around my pattern, okay? Now there's a lot of ways that you could do this applique. You could put it on a steam machine, you can put it on a fusible web. I find that what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut this out. Fusible web, like a two-sided fusible web is an awesome idea also, but for this little project, I'm just going to cut this right out. And then what I've done is, this isn't the finished size of my mug rug, but this is the size that this is one side, cut a bit larger than my mug rug, and then I'm going to be attaching I'm going to be making separately my checkerboards over here, and then I can figure out the actual size that I want. I might put a little band of fabric down here, but first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out my leaf and I'm going to applique it onto my piece of fabric. Now, there's different ways to figure out, to applique something. Say this is my fabric, okay? Now I'm going to go over to my machine and I will show you that I'm going to be using, I've tested it. You want to do a big test piece first on a scrap. Let me get that. Here we go. Here's my test piece, and as you can see, I just grabbed a hunk of fabric. It's two pieces, two bits, but that's okay. I have just one piece here, but what I've done is I've put it on paper. I've taken a hunk of paper. What I'm doing here is I'm figuring out my stitch length, and I've come up, I believe it's this stitch length here. It's a little bit wider and it's a little bit raggedy. It's not a real close satin stitch. But it's not a too wide apart zigzag, because we're just going to be doing little bits, putting our needle down, little bits, putting our needle down. Okay, now, so I could use a stabilizer. That's all I'm talking about on the back of my fabric, because when you go to applique, the tendency with so many stitches appliquing something with a zigzag stitch or a satin stitch or a blanket stitch is for the fabric to ruck up a little bit. You want some kind of stabilizer. Now you can use a piece of paper. It's not going to affect it. You just pull the paper off and then you have your stitches. But in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using on the back of my fabric. I'm just going to cut out a hunk of fabric here, the size of, the size of my piece of fabric here. I'm going to be cutting out this. It's a pellon. This is called, where's the piece of paper? Here it is. This is called a pellon. This is a lightweight interfacing. That's in French. Oh, here we go. This is a fusible midweight. And this is Pellon 931TD. Fusible non-woven interfacing. Midweight to heavyweight fabrics. This is sort of a lightweight project, but this is what I have to hand. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out a piece of my interfacing, and I'm just going to, it's a fusible. What it is, it has a nubbly side, the glue side here, and then a smooth side here. And I'm just going to on the wrong side, not the pretty side of my fabric, on the wrong side, I'm going to cut out a piece of interfacing. And I'm just going to fuse this interfacing here. this square to the back of my fabric, and then I can get to appliquing. After I cut my leaf out, I can then start showing how I applique my leaf onto my background. I have fused my interfacing, my mid-weight interfacing to my background fabric. Now what I have done is I have cut out my leaf. Look at that. Doesn't that look pretty? Lovely fall leaf turning golden. I love that. I think that's really pretty. Now, that's how, now if you followed along, you know that I love to use my Elmer's glue. However, I had just mentioned an application that I thought I'm going to be sharing with you. And a lot of people use this product, okay? A lot of people use this product. It's called Wonder Under, and it's a fusible, it's a Patron product, 805, and it's fusible web and adhesive with backing, okay? This is a Patron 805. And if anybody's done any kind of applique, they know what this product is. This is a web, this is an adhesive, and as you can hear, it has a paper backing. It's not an interfacing. What it is for applique use, it has a fusible web. You can see that, maybe, hopefully you can see that. It's a very paper thin, tissue thin, almost invisible web that has a glue on both sides, and then it has this paper back. So how you do this, and a lot of people do this because it's very easy to do, to adhere your applique to, you iron the glue side, one side glue, one side paper. You iron the glue side down to the wrong side of your fabric, and then you would take your applique, say you're doing a heart, okay? I'm doing a heart applique. There's my heart. I trace out my heart, and I cut it out, and as you can see, very simple to cut out, because basically, I shouldn't be doing that with my fabric scissors. Basically, you're cutting out paper. So here's my heart. I want to applique my heart onto something, okay? There's my lovely little heart. And I want to applique my heart onto here, okay, to make it simpler. So now, what you can do is you then can, sometimes what I do, the paper doesn't come off, where's my pin? I can score that with a pin, and then it just rips it enough. There you go. Now, you can't see that, but I'm ripping the paper off, and the adhesive web has stuck onto this side here, okay? So it's stuck to the fabric, and it has stuck to the back. Now, if I just hit that with my iron, keep it on, hit that with my iron, my applique is ready to be stitched on. That's why this product, Patron 805, is just wonderful. It becomes one with the fabric, and then you can just stitch it however you would want to do that. Now, I put this on here. Oh no, it doesn't belong on there. Oh, here, take it off. And it does come off. Isn't that funny? Jean, you're an idiot. I'm not doing hearts, I'm doing leaves. Okay, it's not sticky. Oh, it's so funny. That's so funny because it's so funny. I'm taking my leaf, and what am I going to do? That's so funny. I'm going to just center this on my piece here because I'm not quite sure how I'm going to finish this. And I love my glue stick. I love this glue stick. It's purple. Don't worry about that purple because it'll come off. I'll do it right to the end. I have never had a problem with my machine gumming up, my needles gumming up, using my disappearing Elmer's glue. By all means, there are tons of glue products, proper sewing glue on the market. Let me bring that down. Let me just bring that down slightly, yeah, because I'm not quite sure how I'm going to finish this mug rug off. Now, I sort of pat that down, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go, and I always press this with my iron. And again, maybe because I do that, my glue, maybe it hardens or something, I don't know, but it dries perhaps. And I've never had a problem with my needle gumming up. So as you can see, with my glue, just like this product here, which has a sticky on it, my project now is ready to take over to my machine. So I'm over at my machine, and I'm using my Brother machine here. Because this has a decorative stitch. Hopefully this will turn out, because I've really come in on it closely. So what I've done is I've set up my machine with a zigzag stitch. Now, you could use a blanket stitch, or you could use a satin stitch, or you could even, if you're good at free motion quilting, after it's done, free motion quilt your leaf on. I'm not being particularly, let me just see if that's big. Yeah, I'm not being particularly really all that precise with my zigzag stitch. I know that there's a school of thought when you're doing a zigzag that you leave your needle in at the top and then you turn. I'm not all that bothered because it's a leaf, but I do have on this machine, I have the option of having my needle down, my needle in the fabric, and my presser foot automatically lifted. And if you don't have that, then you'll just be lifting up your presser foot. But when I come to my I had to do that because I did that manually. But when I come to a point, I'm just going to do my zigzag on this point. I'm just sort of leaving my needle down there, as you can see. Then I'm just doing a couple other stitches there, and then coming back down, sort of not to lose the point. But again, I'm not tremendously bothered. Most of my red thread, I'm using like a reddy rusty thread, is on the leaf itself. Okay. And so it's not on the cream background. And as you can see, because I did that stabilizer, again, I just do a few stitches around to keep the point to a certain extent. It's all right. You know, leaves get broken in nature. It's okay. Because I've used the stabilizer on the back, my applique is not rucking up at all. It is staying beautifully flat. That's the whole purpose of either the interfacing or the steam-a-seam, there's a product called steam-a-seam, or the fusible web that I was showing you, because it keeps the fabric nice and straight, nice and flat, so the bottom fabric doesn't ruck up. So as you can see, I didn't do that great. I just sort of come around here, sort of doing this with one hand. And again, if you're going to do a satin stitch to applique your leaf on, that's fine. Or a blanket stitch. I'm just sort of trying to keep those points to the best of my ability. But, go back on itself. Just come into this valley here, and I'm going to turn around. And if someone's going to have a go at you because your leaf points are missing, ain't nobody got time for that. I'm trying to keep my red stitches pretty much on my leaf. There you go. So my quilt that you saw in the my quilt that you saw in the beginning, this was just a leaf block. Okay, so I could just make a million of these blocks, put them together, and I have a quilt. This is a little bit different for gift giving. Again, so not perfect, but it's perfect enough for me. And as you can see, my glue, and I'll come back to where I began. Just hold that a bit. Now I'm reaching over around my tripod. Now my glue, as you can see, my fabric didn't go anywhere. My fabric did not go anywhere. There's the back. It's lovely. It's not rucked up. It's nice and flat. And I didn't use an interfacing on this. Oops. I didn't use an interfacing on that, but boy, oh boy, is that nice. It's nice and flat. Now, what I can do here is, if I want, here's my leaf. I'm going to go in and I'm going to put in I'm reaching around here. I'm going to put in a smaller, let me just make this smaller, narrower, and do a like a vein. It's a tiny little vein. This is up to you. You could even, if you wanted to, you could even, I'm reaching around here. You could even do a Sharpie, or well, not a Sharpie, a fabric marker to do some veins in your leaf. And come here, I keep reaching around because I think I'm in my other machine. So this is just sort of to make it a little bit more realistic. Come over here. Hopefully you can see this. Just hold that. Like that. And I'll do one more vein. And then, if you're so inclined, you can do a stem. I cut my stem off, right? So I'm going to do a stem. Make it a bit more realistic. Just to there. And there's my leaf. No, didn't take long at all. And, sorry, this is, let me just come out for you. Yeah, so there's my leaf with some interest there. Hopefully you can see that. Okay, next step. What I've done here, as you can see, I have cut down my applique. Here's my applique, and this is measuring about 8 inches by 9 inches, something like that, 8 by 9. However big you want to make it is up to you. It's a larger, it's bigger than a coaster, smaller than a placemat. Now also what I have done, here it is, that's facing you now. There's my leaf, lovely. Now what I've done is I've cut out from my scraps, I've cut out some 2-inch squares. Now to make a checkerboard you sort of need a pattern, but not really. What I've done is I've cut out 5 of the same color, my orange ones here, and then I've cut out 5 scraps of different colors, of the browns and the golds. And I always, what do? I always audition my fabrics. I've done this right before, so I sort of got the size I needed. So what I'm doing here is accounting for a 1/4 inch seam there. That one's a little bit bigger, that's fine. I'm going to be just sort of laying these down where I sort of think they're gonna go on my size, and there we go. There you go, with my 1/4 inch seam, 5 each, and there is a checkerboard, sort of, with just the contrasting. So that basically, folks, is what my mug rug is going to end up looking like. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go over, I won't bore you, I'm just going to go over and I'm going to sew together the pairs like this. I'm just going to sew together these pairs, 2 and 2, and then sew together the rows, and then I will end up with a checkerboard, or these squares the size of here. I will attach onto the back of here, and I'll show you that, I will attach the same interfacing, so the entire mug rug is the same consistency. So here's my little mug rug coming together. What I've done is, and I wanted to explain this to you if you are a beginner, because you might have lost, I might have lost you. This piece of fabric here with my applique, whatever you're going to applique, is 8 inches tall by 9 inches wide. Okay, so we're working with this side here, which is 8 inches. I have cut, as you saw, I have cut 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've cut 10 2-inch squares, okay? I cut 10 2-inch squares, which on my ruler is right there, my 2-inch squares, and with the 1/4 inch seams, I've cut 10 of them, with the 1/4 inch seams, this ends up pretty perfect, okay? 1/4 inch seams, sewing them, the pairs together, and then I sewed the rows together, okay? So you're going to be sewing your pairs and then your rows with a 1/4 inch seam, and you're going to end up a piece that pretty much fits our 8 inches, having cut 10. Now I have backed this, can't see my seams, but I've pressed my seams all going one way. I've nested these little things. They're not perfect, it's fine. I have backed this piece with my interfacing. Now, some of you are saying, well, why don't you just interface the whole lot? Well, I could have done that like when it was done, but what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to make a seam here. I'm going to sew down 1/4 inch right down there, and then I'm going to press this over, and then there's our mug rug. Now, I think I'm going to put a very small, very simple backing, and I'm not going to bind this. By all means, we could bind it, but if for a beginner, the binding on such a little tiny quilt may be a bit daunting. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to finish this just with a backing and a very, very, very thin batting. So we're at this point, we're going to put our mug rug together. My last step was I put my checkerboard onto my mug rug. And I have ended up with a mug rug, which is approximately 8 inches tall by 11.5 inches wide, okay? Big mug rug, small placemat. Now what I'm wanting to do is I'm going to be cutting a piece of batting. Now I have a fusible batting here. I have a fusible. It has a glue on that side and a soft on that side, but any batting could do. I've cut my piece of batting 7 inches by 10.5 inches. And with my fusible batting, I'm going to go over and with the glue side up, I'm going to center it on the back of my placemat here, my mug rug. I'm going to center it, and as you can see, it doesn't go all the way up to the top or the bottom, which I want. I'm just going to fuse that on. By all means, if you wanted to have just a piece of regular batting, this small piece of batting, it will probably just stick or stay. But if you want to put a few pins in there to secure it, or a bit of spray basting, by all means you can. I'll just go over and fuse that. Now, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, oh, I don't feel like binding the whole thing, but I don't feel like putting borders on it or whatever. So what I'm doing, this is sort of a trick to have a sort of a two-sided bound quilt looking little thing. So what I've done is this is my 8.5 by 11 piece right there. What I've cut for my backing, and it'll end up a little top border and a little bottom border. Bear with me, is a piece of fabric. This is my backing fabric that will go on the back of my mug rug. A piece 11.5 inches by 12 inches, okay? So I'm just gonna fuse this over here. I'm gonna fuse my little mug rug to my batting, or are you gonna spray baste it? Okay, fuse that, that's lovely. And then I have it towards me. What I'm going to do with my piece of backing fabric is I'm going to have, this is in front of me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have the 11.5 inches, yes, the 11.5 inch, make sure you have it because it's only half an inch out. I'm going to have the 11.5 inches wide, oops, get rid of that. And I'm going to stitch, I'm going to stitch a 1/4 inch, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit more. I don't have to catch that batting, but 1/4 inch or 3/8 of an inch, doesn't really matter, along that top edge, okay? Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back, forget the side bits, I'm going to come back and I'm going to fold my project, having stitched there, I'm going to fold my project back over to the other side, my 11.5, and I'm going to stitch exactly on that other half there. So I've matched that backing, pretty sides together, always pretty sides, right sides of the fabrics together to my mug rug. I've stitched it there, and then I've come back and it's bigger, so I've come along and I folded it down and I've stitched it along there. Now just to see what I'm getting at is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to grab this. Maybe you have secured your batting with either pins or spray basting or have the fusible. We're just going to see what we're working with here. Okay, there's the back of our mug rug. Okay, almost done. All right, and there is the front of our mug rug. And look at that, instant sort of binding. Okay, now it's just on two sides, or the top and the bottom. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure, I'm going to press this real well, making sure, I'm going to press this seam up here real good, and this one down here, that's where it wants to go, and making sure that this top bit and this bottom border, as it were, is even, smoothing everything out, Look, there's my mug rug. Now we have to stitch the side seams, but first what I'm going to do is I'm going to iron this really well, press this seam down, this seam goes down, creating my binding, as it were, my border, I should say, and then this one goes up. So I'm just going to press that, then I'm going to turn it inside out, and we are going to stitch the side seams. So I've, on the other side, on the right side, I've creased where I want my borders to be. Now, of course, the crease is sort of on the inside, going inside. But what you want to do now is you want to take your fabric and you want to find that crease that you've just ironed, and then you're going to make sure that your fabric is nice and to the end of that crease. Okay, this is going to be our side seam, and you know there's my crease there. So I'm going to take my fabric, pinch it right up to that creased edge, and I'm going to go stitch this side seam, a little bit more than 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to stitch that side seam. Then I know when I turn it inside out that my borders are still going to be proper. Now this side, I'm choosing it to do it on the patchwork side here. I'm going to find my crease up here. There you go. And I'm going to sew here. I'm going to find my crease here, making sure you pull out so you don't get any nasty tucks, like that. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch, again, about a little bit more than 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to stitch to about here. Oops. This is there you go. I'm going to stitch to about there, and then I'm going to come down and stitch to about there, okay? But as you can see there, what have I done? I've actually made a little mark going out towards the seam. So what I'm going to do is when I sew this, I'm going to start at the end here. I'm going to stitch to this point, and then I'm going to put my needle down, and I'm going to pivot, and I'm going to stitch off this seam, this line here. Okay, this is our opening, and if you followed along before, you know that when I do an opening where you turn something, there's a lot of stress on this seam here. Even if you backstitch, 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 there's stress on there, and when you go to tuck it in to do a top stitch or however you're going to finish it off, sometimes it can get a little bit stretched and nasty. If you stitch off your seam, then it becomes like a sturdy stop for this area here to become stretched. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave this opening. I'm going to stitch down and off, and then this side I'm just going to stitch the whole thing. As I explained, I've stitched, you can see it in the red, I've stitched this off there and up, off there and up. I've done this both side seams. I've also clipped my corners. I've clipped my corners close to the stitching, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this inside out, and then I'm going to press it finally. So here is my finished little mug rug. Oh, excuse me. So there's my little borders on the top and my side border. The fact that this doesn't have a border doesn't bother me because I like the interest over here. However, what I am going to do is, here's my opening, and as you can see, I just pressed that, and it just pressed in beautifully with zero stress where I turned it. Zero stress where I turned it. There's the back of my little mug rug / placemat. Now what I am going to do is I'm going to stitch it right in the ditch just to secure it. I'm not going to, if you wanted to by all means and you knew how to, you could free motion a quilt around here, or you could even just do maybe just like a stitch up there, whatever, but you might lose the beauty of the leaf pattern. But what I am going to do is I'm okay with this because it's a small little project. I'm going to stitch in the ditch, and then I'm just going to stitch with my red thread to make a little bit of a statement over here, about 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch along there, and then in the ditch here, and then I'm going to go down there, and then I'm going to close up that edge there. So here is my little finished little mug rug, my little placemat that I've actually sort of quilted. I've quilted it along there. I've stitched it in the ditch there, and as you can see on this side, I've done 2 rows close together of a pretty top stitching to make sort of a little tiny feature over here, since it's asymmetrical, which I quite like. And there's the backing. There's some stitching there. Now this is open again if you are good at free motion quilting, or even if you wanted to hand quilt around there, by all means. But I'm done with this myself. I'm good at free motion quilting, but I'm not going to be doing that because I feel that this mug rug, I'm not going to be throwing it in the washing machine. Hopefully, if it does get a spill, you can spot clean it, and then you can touch it up with a hot iron. Some things, it's like people say all the time, like, oh, is it washable? Is it washable? Is it washable? Is it washable? And I'm thinking, well, sometimes maybe you don't want to wash it. Just a little bit of if something does spill, but by all means, you could wash this if you wanted to wash it, whatever. But you would need, if you have to check your batting, if you can stitch it, if your batting will stay, that's what I'm saying. Be stitched that far apart. I'm fine with this. But again, by all means, if you wanted to stitch around there, you could. But there is my little mug rug with my sort of a self border there. There's the backing. And again, I will have explained in the beginning, this is just like a general rule of how you could make these in any theme that you wanted, any theme whatsoever. For the holiday season, as you know, I don't celebrate Christmas, but you could do like you could do little circles and make a snowman or a beautiful snowflake. You can get patterns from very simple patterns from coloring books. You don't have to buy expensive templates, as you see here. I took a leaf from outside, from nature, by all means. If I wanted to make it smaller, I could have done that one. That really, it's limitless. You can just use your imagination for your templates, however you wanted to do. As you saw, I did my silly little heart. Took me 2 seconds for an anniversary or something. So there's my little mug rug, my little leaf mug rug. You could make a million of these and put them together to make your special leaf quilt. Everyone needs a leaf quilt. All right, folks. See ya. Bye.